Why, hello, hello. Didn't y'all just see me a few seconds ago? Oh, you might not want to see me again after this day is over. All right, my loves, here we are again, and we have made it to panel number 5 on our very special day of becoming me, myself, and I, exploring the spectrum of mental wellness, PTSD, anxiety, self identification, race, and gender through the eyes and of fandom influences. And today, this is going to be a fantastic session. Not like they all haven't been, but darn, are we going to be doing some work in this panel, my friends? I hope everyone's ready for this. We are going to workshop, my friends. Active workshopping. So, fandom influences understanding the dynamic of PTSD and anxiety on self and healing strategies. And everyone on the team is physically going to help identify strategies. So, everybody, please make sure you have paper and pen to write because we're moving. Okay, go ahead and everyone, Sharon, introduce yourself, and then we'll move from there.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Sharon Blady. I am the CEO and founder of Speak Up here in Canada, and I work in mental health fandoms to help folks embrace their superpowers and become bulletproof to stigma using superheroes and K-pop as frameworks for delivering mental health tools and perspectives, knowing that people engage better when they're passionate about stuff.
Mm-hmm. And Ms. Latoya?
Hi, my name is Latoya Charisse. I am a cultural consultant and entertainer. Essentially, what I like to do is to bring in the culture aspect into anything as far as like geekdom, fandoms, and then just the greater world view in general. Background is mainly in mass media and journalism. So typically I'm taking that interviewer perspective and trying to look at things from the inside out and the outside in.
Unbelievable. And the lovely Darren Fink.
Hey everyone, I'm Darren Fink. I am the president and co-founder of Transfiguring Adoption. Transfiguring Adoption is a nonprofit that shows foster and adoptive parents how to help their children process trauma by utilizing books, movies, video games, and even everyday play.
Incredible. It's one of my absolute favorite models and 1,000% proof of concept for our research and our work. So, family.
Yeah.
And Ian Wagner.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ian Wagner, a clinical mental health counselor over in Pennsylvania with a focus on trauma and LGBT relations.
And you're a huge old nerd, just like me.
Oh, yeah. Love it.
And so...
Not going to lie, between each thing, I've been playing with my new Sailor Moon Spiral Heart Rod.
And I
found out it makes noise and it does colorful things, and I'm like, oh, yay.
Mine does. I need something to keep me focused, and this is actually a strategy. So both Ian and I jumped the gun and already started talking about
coping skills.
We already did it.
It's on the side. Every now and again, I pull it under, and I'm just holding it, and it helps ground me.
100%. Does anyone else have something that you use that's a physical, has a physical functionality for grounding and balance, especially when you're going through a moment of anxiety and stress? Like my cat who's behind me, who just decided to jump up.
Well, we were just talking with, having a workshop with families that we tell them to use different fidgets when their children are getting anxious or going through anxiety. Specifically, we were talking about going through theme parks because people are going to a lot of theme parks for the summer. So we have taught them, we have these all over the place. It's a wooden fidget puzzle. And you can just sit there and play with it, and it just helps you to keep focus. I use them all the time, actually, because I can sit there and you'll see it you won't see it because it's out of camera view. I can keep it in a pocket or anything like that and just play with it while I'm listening to you guys, and all my anxiety goes toward it. Yes, the fidget spinner.
Exactly.
Yes.
Where's my
Not just a toy, they work.
Yep. They really do work 100,000%. So I'm so glad that we really opened the conversation with being very authentic and organic, and the fact that across the age spectrum, we are actually all needing to have physical, tactile strategies and tools that help us to be able to manage that moment of verklempt, that moment of panic that I think everybody on it goes through, and possibly at least once in a day.
Mhm.
So
I'm
Sharon,
glad, Nisha, Nisha, I just want to jump in. I'm glad you actually brought that up, just because to me, an even more important thing to acknowledge is the fact that we as professionals even still use them.
Yes.
Like
absolutely.
completely normalizing it. Like, yes, everyone uses them on some type of level.
Well,
Yeah.
and that we don't often have, we're only starting to have those conversations now and talking about things like different kinds of fidget things. But think back to over how many years where you talk with, there's always, here's the person that's sitting there clicking their pen in the meeting.
Mhm.
And we wouldn't look at that as, is that someone doing, again, the equivalent of what we've just talked about with the fidget spinner or with blocks? It's instead, oh God, there's so-and-so being annoying in the meeting, as opposed to recognizing that that was probably an anxiety coping mechanism. And so the fact that we've even stigmatized some of those behaviors in the past. So this, again, being honest and recognizing that this is what we need. And sometimes it is that physical thing.
It's
And
funny you said that, and then my brain goes to, because I'm someone who, like, I don't know, sounds just, I don't know, there's just certain sounds that are just gonna like drive me, like I need to, like, I gotta leave, like types of things. Clicking the pen is one of those things. So also it's like I have to think about what helps me, but then also like, okay, I do want to be like respectful to other people, because I know there's some stuff that I may do that other people like, oh my gosh, would you like not? But then I'm someone, if like if they don't buckle their seatbelt fast enough, I'm I'm ready to jump out of the car, because it's like that repetitive dinging. I'm gonna die. Like it makes me feel just thinking about it. Just
Exactly, but that's the other part to recognize too, and I think that's why I'm glad that we've developed those kinds of tools that can do exactly the same thing, but not be disruptive or annoying to someone else that's got sensory processing issues. So that's where having the fidget tools, good Lord, our family needs to buy like stocks in a stress ball company because because we wear those puppies out like you wouldn't believe. But again, they make sense that you can keep them out of view, especially in this era of Zoom, and they're really important.
Jyoti got me this little guy. His name is Chopper. I don't know if anyone knows
so
Clone
cute.
Wars at all. If everyone knows Clone
yeah.
Wars, it's Star Wars Rebels, actually, a character who was extremely.
That is so much fun.
I love Chopper.
So the purpose to Chopper for me is when I'm working through a really difficult moment, trying to catch my breath, when I'm taking care of a patient or working through, I don't know the plan I need to create. I go to Chopper because Chopper is all as angsty as heck. And Chopper forgives no one, but yet forgives everyone at the same time. And in that loving, but really hard outside, the hard outside, but really soft inside. I love the fact that I can go, okay, Chopper, speak for me in this moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Sharon, what do you think that we can do? I mean, let's chat a little bit organically here about the strategies that we've been using, I guess, and some of the fandoms that we've tapped into.
Oh boy, I think one of the first ones that I tapped into organically, and I didn't. It kind of only came up that I recognized it again, that in retrospect, was the opportunity that fandoms give us to reframe something. And so to see an experience that someone else is going through and you're watching it from the outside, and how either they've handled it, how they've healed from it, how they see it, and then to be able to relate to it and go, oh, wait a second, I can see that thing that I went through that I relate to. I see it in a different light now. So I think that was probably the first place for me, was that fandoms gave me the opportunity to basically reframe and re-experience things because of that place of connection. But it took a long time for me to sort of intellectually recognize and go, oh, wait a minute, I was doing that back when I was 8 years old. And I think that's where a lot of the power of fandoms is that they can do that organically, and they're providing us with tools, but we're not sitting there going, I am reading a comic book and now I have acquired a tool.
Yeah. I know, Darren, you're not teaching it that way. You're teaching it a whole lot of different way.
Yeah. So like when you started talking about that, I mean, that just resonated. I mean, a lot of it resonates with me though, because it's just this whole concept of bibliotherapy is what we run workshops on with parents, because fandoms are an amazing way to tap into our issues, our problems, what we're going through, but we can talk to people, and the fandoms talk to us because it's in a judgment-free arena. And why is that? It's because we're dealing with these characters that someone else has made up. We're diving into, we're connecting with them. We're taking our own persona and we're putting it on them, and we're figuring stuff out. But we're doing it almost like a video game. Like you have a character in a video game and they can die or get blown up, but you're okay. Mm-hmm. So the same way we can put ourselves in these fandoms. And the magical part of it is it's when we're dealing with these issues. Usually when I'm in therapy and I'm going to my counselor, I don't want to work on stuff. I don't want to talk about my ick. That's just who I am. I don't want to, I know it's a safe place. I know but I don't want to admit that I have stuff going on. But with fandoms, I find even with working with kids, we have kids that have hoarding issues. We can watch The Little Mermaid because that's what they want to watch. And we can talk about the fact that Ariel has a whole cave full of stuff that she doesn't need, she has no use for. She's stinking hoarding. What is going on with this? But I don't have to sit there and yell at my foster daughter or my foster son, like, why are you keeping all this food under your bed? And it's rotting and it's destroying my home. That's confrontation. That's not safe. It's not getting us anywhere. But I can talk about, we can talk about The Little Mermaid. We can talk about Ariel together, and she's taken the heat. Yes. We're able to look through that and process things through that safely and judgment-free. So yeah, the fandoms are an amazing way to help us heal and just be socially and emotionally better people.
Yeah. And help with self-expression.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to take 2 seconds and just define what a fandom is, because and I defined it in the top panel, but oh my Lord, I think most of you have experienced this, and tell me if you have. People are like, but I don't have a fandom. I'm not a geek, right?
Oh yeah, you are.
You paint your face to go to football games.
like you don't collect anything.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have a little football thing back there?
Yeah.
You don't
or certain kinds of magazines or a certain thing that they do. And I think that's the other part, is that fandom goes into, and that's why I like the banner that's there. It's about hobbies. It's about something that you're passionate about is a fandom. I mean, and some of you have heard this example before, but I sit there and I go, everybody's got a fandom. My grandmother used to collect, the china that would come out related to the royal family. So there was there was a wall plastered with these things. That was her fandom. She kept on top of all the gossip that came out in the newspapers at the time. That was her fandom, in a place that she could talk to other women of her era where that stuff mattered. Okay, so it's not DC or Marvel or Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's a fandom.
But it might be Real Housewives.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That is a fandom.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Kardashians, a fandom.
Oh, that's a total fandom. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
So Webster's defines it as the state or condition of being a fan of someone or something. In my 17 years of being in the sports fandom, the fans of a particular person, team, fictional series, etc., regarded collectively as a community or subculture. So they actually didn't get it terribly wrong, because they started out with saying it was a fan of someone or something. They just didn't, how do I put it now? They didn't move on to really deeply define it. This is how we define it here at DG. A fandom is any form of pop culture media, creative medium, innovative or scientific platform, a hobby or activity that, when engaged in, heightens your happiness and joy and improves your sense of self and mental health. That is our definition, and that's the one we're going for.
Yeah. I think Webster didn't dig as deep as we did, because we're fans of fandom.
Yeah,
true.
Right.
100%. So how do we define trauma and PTSD, and how does this manifest as anxiety? And I want a couple fandom examples from every one of you.
Oh.
Or at least one. Yeah, I went there.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. One I've been thinking about a lot lately, because they're coming out again, Rugrats. Everyone remember Rugrats?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite characters when I was younger, and I used to watch the show all the time. I didn't understand why. Didn't really until recently, until I really started thinking about it. Was Chucky, like the little redhead who's scared of everything. And I actually realized it's because, like him, I've gotten better as I gotten older, but so much anxiety. Like doing anything, even something like this, public speaking, completely nervous. Hence my, holding wands off camera and stuff like that. And that was a way for me to handle it. And he had his friends like Tommy pushing him through. And with, related to PTSD, I've actually been diagnosed with PTSD due to the loss of my mother, and realized Chucky, not diagnosed, he was a baby, but I was watching an episode recently where his dad was discussing the loss of his mother with Chucky, Chucky's mother, that is, and how it correlated. And it kind of just blew my mind. Like, even at a young age, maybe I noticed something there that I just wasn't able to put into words.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great one. And I think a lot of people wouldn't immediately reach back to Rugrats, but that's amazing.
Yeah, I was surprised myself too, to be honest.
Nah. How about you, LaToya?
It's funny, like I can save the Steven Universe references for a different question, but as you were kind of like speaking, I think I'm wearing like a Blaria, like Black Daria shirt right now. But I really I love that show so much. And I think it's because I mainly relate to the aspect of like kind of already having your thing. So with Daria, like her thing was academics and, being the brain, and like that was her lane. And then with like Jane Lane, like her thing is like art, like that's her lane. And constantly like throughout the entire series, you see how they're kind of grappling with, okay, well, I'm comfortable here, but what happens? Like Jane Lane, she was like, hey, I want to try running. And she kind of got a little judgment. She was like, oh, you're going to be a jock now? Like, it's like, well, I want to see if I'm good at this. I enjoy doing this thing. I know you're not used to me doing this thing. And then it's like, oh, well, you have different friends now. And it's like, then you have to deal with like people saying like, oh, well, you've changed. But the same thing with Daria, she has to face like, okay, well, what happens when you have like that brain label taken away from you? Who are you? And I think honestly, that's why on the rewatch, every single time I just pick up something a little bit different, because I know I've dealt with that before too. Like I've felt like I've had to fragment myself for different groups and not be able to be my whole self. So whenever this certain group is used to you being a certain way and you're like, hey, I want to try this for a minute, it's almost like you don't have an identity now, even though you do, but it's like so based in what other people want. So I think that's definitely something that for me, I'm constantly dealing with as far as like mental health and just like identifying who I am, but also allowing that fluidity, but just being like authentically myself at the end of the day.
So that's a strategy then that you're using.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you define it as a strategy though, LaToya? Or did you just identify it eventually that, oh, this works for me?
I didn't really think of it as a hardcore strategy. I think like the strategies that I have based, where my fandoms have come from, have been more like with definitely like the supernatural type of stuff. But I know like Wicca and witches and that kind of thing. Like even like to me, it goes like so much deeper than a hobby. But like even now, I'm like I'm still into like my tarot cards, and I'm big into the aromatherapy aspect, which is really all it is. Like, but when I was growing up, it was always seemed like this is demonic, and I'm like, it's really not. Like my crystals and my rings and stuff, like I literally use those things as it's a physical thing. So if I feel when I'm like feeling anxious, I notice I'll kind of like rub the inside of my finger. Which can like not be great for your skin. So I tried to like have a ring on so I can have something to like touch. So my brain's not like going out of control, and I can have something like, okay, you're still here, like get back in your body. So that's like a big one. But I think just for me, a lot of my strategies have to do with just like thinking, probably overthinking, but just being able to see my points of view outside of myself and onto different characters. That's what helps me out. And I like talking through things helps me a lot. And I'm like, okay, if I just take myself out of it, how does it look? And I think that's where a lot of my strategies come into play.
That's an identity strategy.
Yeah.
That's not transference, people. I want to make sure everyone understands that.
Right. Yeah.
Transference is the not correct way to do it. That's just this identification of self and self-expression through fandom. Cool. Just want to make sure we went the right direction because people, look, do you see my hands? Look at my hands.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
I don't know what it is. They help.
I've never seen your Ahsoka ring. I love that.
Signed by Ashley. So so I have so much Ahsoka with me all the time. So do you want to tap in there, Darren?
Yeah. So as far as like PTSD and trauma stuff, like when I have like this progression of fandoms, I feel like going from like my fandom for my teenage years up to like this, there's a different fandom for a different season of my life. Right. So lately it has been Once Upon a Time for so many different reasons.
Oh, that's so interesting.
I'm so excited because I think like one of the cons that we're working at is going to have some of the actors there, and I'm so excited about that. But for me, it initially was great for me because it was something my family could connect with, and we had kids in so many different age ranges in our house at the time, that it was nice that we could all sit down and we were all into that and all like into it. But the more I kept watching it, like so many people want to make Once Upon a Time about Prince Charming and Snow White. And it's so not about them.
The queen.
It's totally about Regina. It's all about, and I think for me, it was amazing because there's always, when you see someone in real life, if you talk to any of us, like even right here, you're getting a small glimpse of who we are. And there's a story behind our story that you're not getting because we don't have time. And there's, privacy and how close how much we're going to share with you and stuff like that. But there's always a story behind the story. And I think Once Upon a Time did a great job of showing us the stories behind the stories, especially with Regina, because you could see her trauma that she went through with Snow White accidentally sharing her secret and destroying the man that she loves, and then the whole series is now her having to reconcile that and how to forgive, how to forget, how to move on, and how to have her life back. And for me, especially with what I do with helping foster and adoptive families, it's something where it comes up all the time because you have people that are trying to overcome and rise above their situations and not let their situations dictate who they are. So for me personally too, it's just, I love looking at that because it shows too how a community can come around you and affect you and who the people you choose to be in your life, right? So, I mean, even for me, it's like, it helps me to look at the people in my life. And like, I will literally like say, like, would Regina allow that person into their life, or what would happen? Like you start looking at people like, how close do I let that person into my life to speak into my life? Because not everyone's going to speak good on you or help you overcome. Like some people are going to hold you back. So, I mean, those are some people in Regina's life. She had to just let go, or she had to hold out at a longer distance. And other people, like who would have thought, Prince Charming and Snow White, she lets into her life and they overcome so much. So it shows us how we can deal with relationships and how people can really help us to overcome what we're going through. We need that, right? Like we can't do this. We're not islands. We can't overcome trauma on our own. Like we have to let some people in, but we have to let the right people in.
Can I like piggyback off of what you said real quick? Because I think that's one thing with my loving witches and whatnot. It's always looked at like, oh, this is the weird person. They don't fit into society. And then these people lash out. And it's just like, well, yeah, because when no one accepts you and everybody you're different, so you're evil, or they call you names. and you feel ostracized. Of course you're going to lash out. But then another thing with Regina, and like, I just think witchy culture in general, there's kind of that little bit of redemption that I think she got, that a lot of like witches historically like haven't gotten. Like, okay, well, she can change, like understand that she was going through some things, but then she also had to go back to like people still thinking she's evil. Like, you know, the dwarves are afraid of her and everybody's like, oh my God, she's evil. And it's like, no. I'm not that person anymore. Like, I'm different. I've done some work on myself. I've healed.
But there's the strategy, and I want Ian and Sharon to tap into it because y'all led straight into a conversation point. And this is going to be a difficult one, so I really am asking, right? Regina, unfortunately, they did not want to allow her to heal. So in the healing journey, there was constantly experiences and people doing this. No, you're not allowed to go that path. We need you to stay here so we can be this. Can Sharon and Ian tap into a little bit?
Oh boy, okay. There's part of me, I'm afraid I'm just going to like a whole bunch of things. Again, for the Marvel Universe.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm like, yes, do it.
Yes, yeah. Well, for me, again, so I think of and you know, the idea of stages and phases. So for me, it was comic books and the X-Men, because the X-Men for me it was about being a misunderstood child that was facing adverse childhood experiences, and so these were kids that were going through. Again, it was a different kind of trauma, but they were the microaggressions about being I paralleled them to the microaggressions of being neurodiverse. What Latoya talked about being in different groups, the notion of somebody that wasn't just a thing, just the brainiac, just whatever. So it was that idea of, so how do you process that? So that gave me, honestly, it gave me a safe place with safe adults. It gave me, like I have this like bizarre obsession with Wolverine that it took me years to figure out how much he was really a parent figure for me, because I have an abusive father. But what he represented was, I wasn't looking for a perfect dad. I was looking for a dad that had, may have had their own traumas, this and that, but then healed and did his best to build relationships by mentoring other mutant children, basically trying to do for others what was not done for him. And then his relationship with X-23. So there was that. And then that shifted into things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And that was the, feminism. And again, there goes to witchy culture. And then, it comes back to other things. And especially, I have to say, I really commend Marvel in moving into the MCU, how they have dealt with trauma on a variety of levels. And whether that's taking Tony Stark and the Iron Man and again, his substance use related to trauma, whether that's Bucky, I mean, oh my God, Bucky and the Winter Soldier, or again, just Scarlet Witch. Oh my God, like there's your witch culture, there's your trauma, there's your grief. So the idea of having those stories to connect to translate, and the safe spaces to go, oh, there are other options, or I'm not alone. And from a coping mechanism and a strategy, so much of it has been grounded in I'm not alone, and that you can have conversations about these really tricky subjects by talking about the fictional characters. And it's that safe space that you were talking about, Darren, that you can touch really, really triggering issues, but you can do it in a safe space, a safe literary, neutral, creative space.
Wow. Wow. So much to unpack with that one. Darren, you made a comment. I mean, please share that one.
Yeah, no, like I was just agreeing though, like that X-Men was my first fandom, and the reason is I was bullied every day in high school. I hated going to class. I hated going to high school to the point where I remember having a conversation with my dad that I was so distraught with going to school that my dad was like, I'll call in sick for you for a couple of days if you don't want to go. Like my dad, who would have never done that, was like, could see that I was being, so yeah, for me, it was X-Men, like, was where I could fit in, where I was a different child. I didn't like, in my Midwest area that I grew up, I didn't like hunting. I didn't like fishing. I didn't like basketball. I liked art. I liked doing artistic things. And that wasn't the typical person. The typical boy in my high school didn't like doing those things. And so I was bullied for it. And the comics, I totally agree. Like, so I think I might die on this hill in saying that Marvel does such a great job with their psychology of their characters. When I've looked at the history of it, it's always described to me, DC used to come up with superheroes, and even with the creation of Superman, when Marvel came on the scene, people were looking at Marvel characters wanting to know about Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Spider-Man did something, and they're like, yeah, cool, Spider-Man, but what's going on in Peter Parker's life? What is Peter Parker? No one cared about Clark Kent. No one cares about Clark Kent. They're like, get back to Superman.
Boring.
Yeah. Well, they actually had to change it. He was too perfect.
Have you
at one
not
point in
been
time.
listening to my panels to know that I am a DC fan?
All I'm saying.
As far as Superman and Clark Kent,
But
Clark Kent is supposed to be boring and forgetable. Thus his alter ego.
That's true.
Well,
That's
and there's
true.
a whole other aspect too of the idea of hiding in plain sight. That especially when we use superhero metaphors, it's the ability to, again, how do we Clark Kent or Peter Parker it? How many of us are masking certain things to float between those different groups and code switch? So yeah, there's another aspect there that comes part of the coping mechanism. How do I take my superpowers, put my glasses on, and blend?
Right.
So tell me about that, Ian. How are you going to teach a patient to do that?
Well, before I go completely into that, I want to jump back to Regina real quick because it triggered a thought and I wanted to touch on it. With Regina, and this goes with just about anyone, please, if you could think of someone this doesn't go to, let me know. But with trauma specifically, we often sit there and think about people like, why are you doing that? What's wrong with you? We fail to think about what happened to you.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, like, why are you acting that way? Like Regina, like you were saying, Darren, she went through a trauma of losing the love of her life at that point, and being
and her mom, like the mother-daughter dynamic there. Holy crap! Like,
yeah, not
that's
healthy.
a lot.
Not healthy at all.
Mm-hmm.
But we fail to think of that, and that's
No. I was going to say, so, like, because I want you to finish the thought, but finish it with the fact that I want people to understand what we're doing today. This is a trauma wheel. Remember that.
Which is
what does that loss do then? Go ahead.
Yeah.
The loss triggers trauma and how you're going to react to it. So Regina, she started acting out. In her mind, her perception, she was betrayed by Snow. So what is she going to do? She is going to make that little girl's life miserable. Take everything from her. Because if Regina's hurt, Snow has to be hurt too. So I'm sure we all heard that saying when we were growing up, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
That's Regina right there towards Snow White.
And that brings up another part related to fandoms is we often, there's good guys and bad guys in a story. And a lot of times it's about people who are healing and people who have not healed their trauma. And so that a lot of times the villains or the anti-heroes are really just folks that have not healed their trauma and that they've lashed out. And I think that's from a mental health perspective. It goes right back to you were saying, like, what happened to you? So that when somebody engages in a negative and a mentally unhealthy, response, behavior, engagement with others, that ability to step back non-judgmentally and go, what happened to this person that this is the way that they get through things and that they relate, and that in some cases maybe even perpetuate their own trauma and their own inability to heal in that moment, and what can we do to help bring them to a place of healing? It's the same way that Charles Xavier never gives up on Eric. He's always there to help, Magneto, and to see things from Magneto's side, knowing that Magneto has gone through pain, and that's why he does what he does.
And I think that's so huge too, because with doing work that I'm doing with foster and adoptive children, I find that the general public doesn't understand what they're not looking at what happened to you. They're trying to fix you. There's something wrong. Yeah. And unfortunately, the statistic that I throw around a lot is 50% of newly licensed foster parents in America are going to give up this year. That's 50% of half of them that get their licensing this year after having one child in their home are going to give up. And it's because they aren't equipped. They're not asking, what happened to you? How can I help you through that? They're saying, what's wrong with you? How do I fix you? And they can't do it, so they move on. Yeah. And we've got to change that dynamic. I feel like if you're watching this as general public, for people, not just kids, but people that are struggling with PTSD and trauma, anxiety, in order to really have an impact and to change and make things better, we have to, and as the general public, see and ask that question, what happened to you and not what's wrong with you.
And then following to what happened to you, I like to find, we're discussing strategies here. I like to follow the sanctuary model. And basically a lot of what it is open communication. They have 7 big commitments, which is nonviolence, emotional intelligence, social learning, open communication, social responsibility, democracy, and growth and change. And I find that works wonderfully with trauma. Nonviolence, you're promising to make sure you and your others around you are both physically and mentally and emotionally safe. And emotional intelligence, we're talking through our stuff. That also goes with the open communication. I can go on with the other commitments, but I know we're short on time. But it works wonderfully. Just that open communication, I think, is the biggest one. Being able to listen and tell others about your story. It sometimes doesn't even just help you. It helps the people around you too, because that encourages them to open up about their story as well. Because we all have a story.
I think so too. So I'm a big, I love Steven Universe. And I noticed with 2 different ways this got handled. There is one thing with hey, talk to me about it. But I know for me, I need to process first. So I noticed one thing with Amethyst, one of the characters, she was just going through a lot about how she was made and all this other stuff. And everybody is just kind of in a sense, just kind of bugging her. And so there's this thing that happens to gems. They poof. When they get if they're under physical stress, they poof. If they're under emotional stress, they poof. Yeah. And when they poof, it's like their time to go back and put themselves back together. Well, Amethyst, she's very known for she'll be back in no time. And I think Amethyst also knew that they're expecting me to come right back. So when she came back, she had four legs and she's acting oh no, I want it to be like this. Look, I can do cartwheels. I'm fine. And then she kept getting poofed until finally, without going through the whole episode, but finally she took the time that she actually needed to literally put herself back together physically. But, obviously it's a metaphor for mentally as well. She just needed time without everybody else's voices in her head and all the expectations. And then another one with Garnet, she's kind of known, she's the strongest gem. She's got it all together most of the time, but she was going through some stress too. And when she poofs, so she is made up of 2 other gems. So she split into 2 different people. And it's she needed some understanding, but she didn't necessarily need to immediately start talking about her trauma. They had to ease into it. It's let's go do some things that you like to do first. And they did this with each piece of her. They kind of broke off and oh, I'm going to go do my thing over here. And I'm going to go do my thing over here. And then they were able to kind of open up, and then she was able to then put herself back together. So while I do think it's important to talk about things, sometimes people just need some space, and that emotional intelligence piece is a huge part of it, because wellness just doesn't look the same for everyone. And I know I'm one of those people too. I honestly need somebody leave me alone for me to process. And it's really irritating when they're just, I know they want to be there for me, but I can't, it's making me anxious. I don't even know what's going on yet. Just
can I
let me do my thing.
Can I piggyback off that? Can I piggy off that one real quick and propose something? Because I completely agree. Sometimes you don't need to talk. You need to process. Give me my space, out of my bubble, please. But to me, that's also part of open communication, because I can't read your mind. So if you let me know, hey, I need time to process this on my own, then there you go. That's open communication right there. You don't need to tell me your whole story. You just need to let me know what you need from me. And if it has to go away, fine. Emotional intelligence is you realizing that and me hearing you and respecting it.
Yes.
Well, and in trauma recovery, so much of it is about those safe spaces. And it really is about laying a foundation that says this is a safe space to speak when you want to share, as opposed to, like you say, okay, well, talk. I've created a safe space. It's all great and warm and fuzzy here. You know, tell me what I need to know to help you. And again, that it goes to that thing, and I can see where
Like, I don't know yet. Like,
it's like,
Honestly,
no. The whole point of the safe space is I've created it. And the idea is that when you feel I've done my best, I'm building trust with you. You have to do that kind of work, and then wait. That person has to walk into that space. I don't care how much you've spent on construction costs and laying foundation. If I'm not ready to walk through the door, you got to wait for me, and you got to wait for me in an accepting, non-judgmental way. And then you need to know that I might be in a good space to walk through that door today, but I might not be tomorrow. And just because I walked through it today doesn't make me, you don't pick up from there the next day.
5 minutes to end the panel, my darlings.
Yeah.
I hate this so much.
yeah.
I just want to address really quickly. Willow's just really sharing, and I want that sharing to just us to read it and let her continue sharing. So, as someone who grew up in foster care, the encouragement of acceptance in a foster home needs to be better.
Yeah.
I struggled with not feeling wanted and not being part of the family. Being moved around didn't help any. I completely can feel that, and I'm so much love with who you are today, Willow, and how strong you are because of that journey. I mean, just
amen to the last comment she's got there.
Starting with the introduction to other family members, instead of persons introducing the foster child as the foster, we should be introduced as if we were their own child. And because labels are everything. So once you create, the child is already in the pain wheel, and they're living within the pain wheel. Every time you add another moment of disconnection, which they already have, every word that comes from you and every action and vibe, seriously, creates more pressure on that pain wheel and in the disconnect wheel. So doing something like what Willow's talking about here is a no-no. It's not just a no-no in this system. And I honor your journey. I honor Darren and Margie so much for being who they are to heal in this journey in the way that they are. Anyone who lives in the pain wheel of trauma recovery, whether it's a mental, physical, spiritual, believe me, spiritual abuse is a thing, people. Emotional abuse, cultural abuse, social abuse, global abuse. There's so much to unpack with that. Understand that not one of these people, at no time in life are you helping anyone by adding on to their disconnections. The number one thing you can do is say, tell me what it is I can do for you today. And if that is just sit here, then that's what I shall do. That's it. Because sometimes the answer is just sit there. Hold a hand. Sit and read a book while they sit and they unpack. It's about having presence and connection.
Like we discussed, sometimes they're not ready to talk. A lot of times what I do is we sit there and we play Uno.
Oh, yes.
Not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. And I just want to say real quickly, because I know we're wrapping up. Willow, thank you so much for sharing with us. That was amazing. Really appreciate it. And I'm glad you're in the Fandom family with us, because we're your family right here in Fandom.
I am so sorry, guys. I got bitten on the air while we were on here, so it's been itching the whole time. I apologize. So thank you so much. And like Darren said, you are not alone, and please know that. This team here is literally a team for a reason. We are a family, and we are here to create a supportive structure for everyone as we move forward as the foundation. I think we've gotten touch points for everyone. Darren, want to let us know how to find you, my dear?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to keep in touch with me would be to first head over to our website, transfiguringadoption.com. I'd love it if you would join our e-newsletter so we can keep in contact with you. The other best way to keep in contact with me is following me on Facebook at Transfigure Adopt. It's TRANSFIGUR ADOPT. Transfigure Adopt. Just search for Transfiguring Adoption. We're on Instagram also.
I have them up here. We're just having, again, it's a little hard sometimes to grab onto them. I apologize. Oh, there, Jojo, you got it.
Wow, there we go.
There
Yeah,
we
it's
got it.
scrolling
And I
up
got
there.
your little logo up there. Thank you guys so much.
Fantastic.
Oh, it's good. No, Willow, I know you couldn't make it today. We're perfectly fine. But guess what? We're going to be doing this again. A lot more straightforward. Okay, everyone. Love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. We just literally touched the tip of literally Mount Kilimanjaro. Okay, guys, we got a long way to dive yet. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And next conversation, I know Willow's going to be there, especially for this one.
Looking forward to it.
We are going to head into, woo, guys.
Hello.
We are going into panel 6. Wow! It's breathing time. Okay, love everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Right.